everybody, I'm Rainbow and welcome to Dimensional Walking. Today's video is going to be something kind of extended to the video I had done before when I critiqued the movie Nefarious. And what had happened is, after I saw the movie, what I thought I would do is kind of look into the background of, well, why do things like that happen? And then I wanted to take it a step further and then look into who are the people who possibly would be bringing in these dark entities. What was part of the history of even doing this? And it's not so much the circumstances of a particular person, man or woman or child, that this happens to. I think I wanted to go a step even further, where I wanted to know, in the history of humans, what has been done to attract and bring these entities about that want to take over the human soul, not the human soul, the human body, and possess it, and then kind of push the soul out, or kind of, share the body with the soul, which probably is pretty freaky. But I thought I'd look back into the history of what this is all about, and so that's how I came across the title. And the title of the video today is Necromancy. And necromancy is, another word for it is magical sorcery or black magic. And it's the practice of communicating with the dead in order to predict the future. And it's a power play. Let's just be real here. The people who are actually probably using this today are probably looking into what's in it for them. They call the shaman, they are called, the necromancers are called the shamans of the dead, also known as bone conjurers by the Jews. And many medieval writers call necromancy maleficium. I screwed that word up. Maleficium. So it must be connected to the word maleficent. So something that's dark. But it is spelled M-A-L-E-F-I-C-I-U-M. Maleficium. That's what I'm assuming how you say it. So I decided to kind of get information for you guys so that if you're interested in this stuff, you can kind of learn a little bit more about it, just kind of like I did. And interestingly enough, when I was doing this, weird stuff is happening around the house. And one of the things that happens with necromancy is the things they want is, or the ability that they have is illusions. So they can kind of create something from a dead person or a dead animal, or something that's connected to whatever is deceased. Now, I don't have any of that here in the house, and I think when you sometimes talk about stuff like this, little crazy stuff happens. So, for instance, when I was in my room, I saw my cat walk in my room with me. And then I went into another bedroom, and there he was on the bed, and you've seen him, he's a big squishy orange tabby coon cat. So he was actually in the other bedroom, but I don't know what it was that was in the room with me. And then Michael heard me in another bedroom, and I happened to be in the family room with the animals, and he came out and he said, "How did you get here?" He said, "I just saw you, or thought I heard you in the other bedroom." So when you do stuff like this, the dark, the dark underbelly can kind of let you know that it knows you're talking about it. So anyways, that's something to think about when you do stuff like this, because you kind of attract a little bit of attention to yourself. But I have a lot of protection, and I'm not too worried. So let's get into this. The reasons for doing necromancy in ancient times were for divination, for telling the future, and hidden knowledge. And we know that that's really important to a lot of the people in power. They want to know what's going to go on in the future. Will they win a war? Will they be elected the president? Will they be elected the dictator, or whatever it is that they're looking forward to achieving? Shamans call it calling the ghosts of the ancestors. So this happens to be with a deceased person. And not all necromancy is for the dark side. There's people who practice it and who practiced it in ancient times for different reasons. It wasn't always for dark reasons. It was practiced in ancient Egypt, Babylonia, Greece, Rome, China, and also Persia. Necromancers would call to the dead in a combination of high-pitched squeaking and low humming. They were also called the diviners of the dead. It was also widespread among the people of Chaldea, the Hermeticists or star worshippers. Babylonian necromancers were called Idamu. And as far as that pronunciation of it, I couldn't really find where it came from. I don't know why they were called Idamu, but that's, and I looked up how to pronounce it for you guys, because you know how I kind of goof the pronunciations of things, and that's kind of how they said to say it. Now, necromancy rituals consist of rites must be performed around a pit with fire in the early morning hours. A specific recipe must be followed, which includes blood of a sacrificial animal to concoct a liquid offering to the ghost or dark entities. This is drunk, I'm assuming, by the necromancer while saying prayers that are being recited to both the spirits and the underworld. So the necromancers had this idea, like the Egyptians, that there was somebody in charge of the underworld, and so they kind of had the deceased here and the entities that were in the underworld over here, so they had a separation of the two. And that way they were able to call upon whoever it was in charge of the underworld to go get the person who, or the animal, sometimes it's not a person, it's an animal, to go find them and bring them so that they can actually talk with them. Some rituals can be elaborate, involving magic circles, wands, talismans, and incantations. And so that's kind of what we were just talking about. Now the wands, I mean, I have a wand, but I just have it because I think it's really pretty. I've never used it for necessarily a ceremony. But I do understand the wand aspect. And if you think about the Harry Potter movies, what happened? They actually had in one of the books, they actually talked about the necromancer. And then obviously in the Harry Potter movie, you can see that they were using wands to do their magic and spells and rituals and everything. So they would be reciting whatever spell, and then they would have something that would appear from that. And so that's probably where this came from this ancient ritual that was done thousands of years ago. So the dark necromancer might wear the deceased person's clothing and consume food that symbolizes lifelessness and decay. And the foods are black bread. I'm assuming not moldy bread, because if they are eating it, they would make themselves sick. And unfermented grape juice, which it couldn't be fermented because it would make them sick. I mean, you don't want to do a ritual and then get sick. I don't think they want that. So I think it's symbolic of the lifelessness and the decay. So let's see. Some necromancers did go too far, and they actually consumed mutilated corpses. And I think that they probably did the mutilation, and they probably consumed some of the deceased body. Ceremonies can carry on for hours, days, or weeks, leading up to the eventual summoning of the spirits. These ceremonies are performed at places where people were jailed or confined, or other areas of meaning for the practitioner. So that tells me that some of the people who they chose for these practices or these rituals were the ones being sacrificed. And so it's not just always an animal that was sacrificed, it's people that were being sacrificed. Interestingly, they prefer to summon the recently departed based on the fact their revelations will be spoken more clearly. So they want it. They want to do these rituals within a very short time of the person dying. The time frame usually was limited to 12 months following the death of the physical body. After this time elapsed, the necromancer would evoke the deceased spirit instead. And, basically, I don't know if it was just the way that they viewed things back in ancient times, but they basically were talking to the spirit. Now, it's supposed that they were able to, early on, after the person passed away, bring the body, animate the body enough so they could speak through the body. I don't really know how that works, but that sounds a little creepy to me. So, and also, the one thing that I will talk about a little later, they do illusions, like I said earlier when Michael thought I was in the bedroom and I wasn't, and I thought my cat was right in another bedroom with me and he wasn't, he was in another bedroom on the bed. So they can give the illusion of the person or the animal, or I think even probably an object if they so want to, and give you the idea, the impression that whatever it is that you're looking at is actually the deceased person or animal. Some of the hallucinogenic type of plants that were used in the ceremonies were black henbane, Jimson weed, belladonna, and mandrake. So I'm sure that they were very careful in taking certain amounts of all of these. Now, of course, there's mushrooms that they could have taken, and depending on the topography of where they lived, there's other things that they can use. And in this specifics, this is more ancient, and this is the belladonna is actually something that has been known worldwide. And I'm sure at this point anybody can get any of these different types of hallucinogenic plants. Medieval necromancy was considered to be astral magic based on Arabic influences and exorcisms derived from the Christian and Jewish teachings. The Arabic influences are evident in the rituals that involved the moon phases, sun placement, and time. Fumigation and the act of burying images are also found in both astral magic and necromancy. So that means fumigation basically means a cleansing. So that's why I was telling you that I don't think it's the necromancy is always for dark purposes. It may be for a family who wants answers after a person has passed on, maybe an unexpected death. So the preparation has to be a cleansing of an area or within this case, it says act of burying images. So whatever the deceased person owned, they would actually include that in with the ritual, and just make sure that whatever area that they go to, which I just read to you, they have their specific and preferred locations where they want these rituals to happen at. They would probably have that area cleansed for the specific ritual. So I found that very interesting. Let's see. So Christian and Jewish influences appear in symbols and conjuring formulas used in summoning rituals. So, that's the one thing, that symbology is huge in these different types of rituals. And I think that's something to look at when we talk about Ouija boards, and I'll get into that in just a minute. So medieval practitioners believed they could accomplish three things with necromancy: will manipulation, illusions, and knowledge. With will manipulations affected the mind, or they wanted to affect the mind of a certain specific person, maybe somebody connected to the family for a power play, or the deceased person, because it involves not just the deceased person, but it involves the people around the dead person, and it depends on the circumstance of what it is they're looking for. So what they're thinking with necromancy is to affect the will of the deceased to do whatever they want them to do, which would influence the family or someone alive, because that's where the illusion comes through. And so here it says that it's the will manipulations affects the minds and will of another person, animal, or spirit. So that's what I'm talking about. They can take that the person's spirit and manipulate that spirit to do their dirty deeds. They can actually influence animals. That's why people, you know, when they're in the woods and they see some strange animal doing something really weird, that's probably a necromancer, probably somebody doing dark magic. And that comes into mind skinwalkers. I guess skinwalkers also do a different type of necromancy, more of the black magic type. Demons are summoned to cause madness, inflame hate, or to gain favor or constrain another person. So I believe thousands of years ago, that's basically what happened with bringing in these dark entities, these demons. So what they don't understand is once you bring it in, it kind of owns them. And it's the deal they don't understand is that they come from a different realm where they don't respect the boundaries or the rules of this reality. They don't care. So you got to be careful with this stuff because you don't want to make a deal with something that has total disregard for your very soul. So with the illusions, that involves reanimation of the dead or conjuring things. And so that's what happened, I think, with my kitty, where I thought he was in the room with me. He walked by my ankles. I'm like, oh, he's in the room with me. And then I go back out, I go into another room, and he's on the bed. So I'm like, interesting. I don't know if I was a little freaked out about that, but it was interesting. Knowledge is allegedly disclosed when demons provide information about various things, findings, or revealing future events. And that's why I think a lot of different cultures in the world, why during wartime this is probably done more than we can ever imagine to find out the outcome of who's going to win whatever battle. And so, but there's a price that you have to pay for that. Something's got to be paid, and they usually want it in the soul value, not money. They give a hoot about money. They want it in soul, quantities of souls, because that's their end game is to take as many souls away from the light. That's their job. So, taken a step further, demonic magic necromancy consists of circles traced on the ground with various objects, shapes, symbols, and letters being drawn and used. Conjuration with special wands, and sacrifice. And that has a lot to do with the sacrificial blood included in on that. So if you think about it, you know, the different occults that are out there that actually do the pentagrams and they do it for dark magic, all of this has to take place. And basically what they're doing is they're doing the black magic, which is necromancy, or a version of it on the dark side. The Ouija boards, for me, are huge because think about it this way. Even though the Victorians had this idea, oh, let's talk to the underworld, let's talk to the spirits, what they didn't understand is that in this type of game, this board, it's still an invitation for anything that's on the other side. So what do you have? You have letters, you have symbols, you have numbers, you have different things around depending on how a Ouija board is made. And people can make their own Ouija boards. They can put any symbols on there they want. They can do anything that they want. But the bottom line is that once you create that and once you start playing the Ouija board and then once you open the door, the floodgates to whatever is on the other side, anything can come through. And that's why I think that the Ouija boards are so dangerous, because these things want ignorant people doing and playing the games. They don't want someone like those of us who know better and probably wouldn't do it. They don't want someone who's knowledgeable doing it. And if somebody is knowledgeable who is doing it, then if they're not doing it obviously for the dark reasons, and they can close off appropriately, then that's the important thing. Because I don't think that if I would not do it only because I don't know the end game for these dark entities, and they play so many horrific games on people, and once they come in, it's hard to get rid of them. But I have seen people who do the Ouija boards and nothing has happened to them up to this date. But the closing off is so very, very important. People just have to understand you have to understand how to close off and to put your foot down and just say, you got to go now. Now, my issue has always been, will they listen to some human saying, well, no, you got to go back. Will they go back? And I don't think they always do. I don't think that that's something that they're interested in doing. I think that at the end of the day, with all of this, I think it's important to understand that any invitation that any human makes to allowing these things to come into their lives, that if you give an inch, these things will not just take a mile, but they'll take hundreds of miles. And the end result will be the fact that you will be, unfortunately, paying the price. Your family will be paying the price. Now, necromancy, I think, when it was done by practitioners of the old, like the Egyptians or whoever, I think when you have priests and priestesses, the people who, that's what their lives were, that's exactly what they did day in and day out. They always did this. I think that they had a different kind of mindset when it came to this kind of thing. I don't think it has anything nefarious to do with bringing in demons and all of that. I think that in the old ancient cultures, they did necromancy for specific reasons, probably to find out information from the deceased, to see if they could connect to the deceased. I don't think it was to gain, it was always for a gain of power, knowledge, whatever, and I don't think it was always for dark reasons. But just remember that in that movie, somehow, some way, that character was possessed, and this thing had taken over the body, and he was in control anytime he wanted to be. And the poor young man, or I guess he was maybe younger when he took over, and then he grew to an older gentleman, but he was never in charge. He was always afraid. And so that's the one thing for me that I want to get across to everybody, is that you don't have to be afraid. Just understand that as much as there is this ability for the darkness to take over, there's that much ability for the light to help you out. So just remember to be in the light, be in light and love. Understand that even though there might be these demons around, there's archangels, and the archangels are here to help us. And I just got goosebumps all over me. The archangels are definitely here to help us out. So I think, just understand that even though there's movies like about possession and anything that has to do with demonic possession, to me, means that there is more attention being brought onto the darkness. And I would love to see a movie that is brought out that is about someone surviving that and coming out on the end of light and kicking a demon's ass. That's what I would like to see. I'd like to see a movie about that, where something comes along and just kicks his butt. And I think that, there could be money made in a movie like that. I feel that way. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a little kind of out there, but I thought it would be something interesting to follow up on since my last video. So you guys take care, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.